afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. You are now listening to The Right Side. I'm your host, Doggett, coming to you on the greatest station in the nation from the greatest location in the nation. Shout out to all of you who are listening to us as far north as Kennebunkport, Maine, as far south as Key West, Florida, as far east as Long Island, New York, and as far west as Long Beach, California, and all the points in between. Those of you that are listening to us in State College, Pennsylvania today, where the Penn State University is located, glad you all are listening. You're probably glued to your TV, and I'm hoping for a bad outcome for your local team there, as I am an unashamed and unabashed Ohio State fan, proud graduate and alumnus of the Ohio State University. For those of you that are listening in Columbus, let's get this offense going and let's get some points here on this drive. When I came on the air, they were driving. I hope they at least got a field goal out of this drive, if not a touchdown, as they play into the fourth quarter. Right now, the score is 10-6. However, Ohio State had the ball and was driving when we went on the air. There are several things that you can do to stop the spread of respiratory diseases like COVID-19. One, wash your hands with warm soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Now, if you don't know what 20 seconds are, just sing happy birthday to yourself, and when you have completed the song, you have completed 20 seconds. Also, cover your mouth when you call for sneeze. Now, yes, I know that sounds like common sense. However, how many of you are like me know that the least common thing these days is common sense? So please cover your mouth when you call for sneeze. Also, stay at home when you are sick and stay away from people who are sick. Listen, that job, that event, that worship service, that play or movie or game, whatever it is that you think you just have to be there for because it can't go on without you, I've got sad news for you. It will. So please stay at home when you are sick and please stay away from people who are sick. Also, wipe down frequently touched objects and items with some type of disinfectant, and also keep some hand sanitizer in your vehicle so that when you go to the gas station and pump gas, you will have something to sanitize your hands with, since you do not know who touched the pump prior to you. And this was brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station, No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise, powered by Google, sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines, and also sponsored by the Dedicated Senior Medical Center, which gives better health care for seniors. So if you're a senior out there, or if you're a senior in denial like I am, check out Better dedicated dedicated senior medical center rather, for better health care for seniors. Now, for those of you that are in the Cleveland area, on the first or third Saturday of each month, I've got some great news for you. At 6812 Woodland Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, on the first and third Saturday of the month, between the hours of 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., they are giving away a free bag of groceries. That's right, free. That's what I said, free. No, I didn't stutter. In case you didn't hear me the first two times, the groceries are free. Now listen, normally you have to show something when they have these type of food giveaways. You have to show an EBT card, you have to show a proof of residence, or you have to show a proof of income. Well, guess what? In this instance, you do not have to show any of that. You do not have to show anything except for one thing, and that is up, in that you show up, and then as soon as you show up, you receive the free bag of groceries, no questions asked. But listen, not only do you get the free bag of groceries, but you also get free clothing for adults and children. So you get free bag of groceries, you get free clothing for adults and children. But listen, it doesn't stop there either, ladies and gentlemen, because if you are there between the hours of 11:30 a.m. and 2 p.m., you get a free lunch. That's right, a free lunch. And listen, this is not something that's thrown together or slopped together. This is a hot lunch. It is a home cooked meal that will be yummy to your tummy. Mm-hmm. So you'll go home with a bag of groceries, with clothes for both yourself and your children, and a full stomach full of good hot food. And you ask, when is this again, Jeff? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. It is the first and third Saturday of each month at 6812 Woodland Avenue, right here in Cleveland, Ohio, between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And we want to thank the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, Major Care Ministries, and also Williams Temple Church of God in Christ, which houses this event each and every month. Now, if you're new to this program, this is how we do things around here. We talk politics, we talk sports, we talk the issues of the day. We throw some topics out on the table. I give my take on said topics. Then we invite you to call in with your take on those topics at 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. Now listen, you do not have to agree with me on the take that I have. In fact, that's what makes really good talk radio, if we can have a healthy debate about the topic. The only requirement, well, actually, there are two requirements. One, you get one call per show. Two, you get a limited amount of time to get your take in. Now, if you feel you need to go longer, then you need to come down to the studio and talk to Marie and also talk to Denise Kennedy and talk to them about getting your own show on here so you can pontificate for as long as you wish on whatever topic you want. But as long as you're calling in here, you get a certain amount of time to get your take in and to get it all through the air, but you only have one time to call. So make the best of your call. Today, and before we get in, Marie, you got a score update for me?
Yes, I do. Ohio State 13, Penn State 6.
Okay, so
Penn State currently has the ball.
So they kicked the field goal. So fourth quarter, Penn State have the ball, Ohio State up by a touchdown. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Today, this is what we're going to talk about. This is what we have here on the table on the right side. We're going to talk about the ongoing chaos in the House of Representatives, the hypocrisy that's going on there, the fact that this is making history, that this is the longest in the history of the country that the House has gone without a leader, without a speaker. We're going to talk about what caused all of this, where we're at now, and why the hypocrisy of a certain party is just showing. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to do an NBA preview. Now, we're not going to go every team, all 31 teams or 30 teams, or however many teams there are, one by one and break down the whole team. First of all, we're only on the air for 2 hours. Number two, that would be boring anyway. So we're not going to do that. What we are going to do is we're going to look at the top 4 teams as we see them in each conference, give a breakdown on those, and then talk about the other teams to a lesser extent in each conference that we think will make the playoffs. We'll talk about who our Rookie of the Year is going to be, in our opinion, who the Defensive Player of the Year is going to be, in our opinion, who the MVP is going to be this year, and the teams that are going to meet in the finals, and who's going to win the NBA Finals. We're also going to talk about President Biden's speech. President Biden gave a speech on Thursday regarding the situation in Israel along the Gaza Strip right now. We have some thoughts on that as well. We're also going to talk about Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys. Micah Parsons had some interesting comments that he made on his podcast, and we have an answer to a question that he asked on his podcast, and we'll get into our hero and our zero of the week. So there you go. That's what's on the docket today, if you will. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087. The House of Representatives of the United States is the body within the legislative branch of the government, has 435 members in the House, and this is the body where laws are introduced. They are discussed upon the floor of the House, and if they are passed, they then go on to the Senate to be discussed in the Senate, and if passed in the Senate, to then go before the desk of the president to be signed into law or vetoed by the president, whichever the case may be. And then, of course, the Senate, with a 2/3 vote, can overturn that veto. But the beginning of lawmaking within the United States of America, when it comes to federal laws and federal policy, begins in the House of Representatives. And as I said, there's 435 members in the House. The majority party, the party that is in control, has the privilege to elect a Speaker of the House who is the leader of the House. By the way, that person is second in line to the presidency of the United States. The Vice President is first in line, and then the Speaker of the House is second in line. So you see how important this office is. If something were to happen to the President and the Vice President, God forbid, the Speaker of the House would be the President of the United States. So this is not some formal position. This is not some figurehead type position. This is a very important and influential position within the government of the United States. The Speaker of the House, since they are voted in primarily by the majority party, that is the party in the House that has the most seats, also has power in the House to get legislation passed by, if you will, putting the pressure on members of their own party to get certain legislation passed. They also have the ability to work across the aisle to make deals with the opposition party in order to work for the betterment of the American people. So I'm just giving you all of that, which is, is not really a big revelation to you. I'm sure that, most of you that are listening already know all of these things. So you're probably saying, okay, Jeff, we know all that. What's your point? Well, just had to set this up just in case for those who don't know how this whole system works. Right now, well, let's go back a few months. So after the midterm elections of last year, when the so-called red wave was supposed to happen and never really materialized, really turned into a red drizzle, if it even was that much, the Republicans in the House had a slight majority over the Democrats. I believe it was a 5 or 6 seat majority within the House of Representatives. And because the Republicans had the majority in the House of Representatives, they elected as the Speaker of the House Congressman Kevin McCarthy from California after a record-setting 15 votes, almost sounded like a 15-round fight, and basically that's what it was. They finally, after 15 votes, 15 times voting, not 15 votes, but 15 rounds of voting, finally selected Kevin McCarthy to be the Speaker of the House. Now, in negotiations for that with members within his own party, Kevin McCarthy made some concessions because, and this is a review for anyone who listens to the show regularly, because we talked about this back in January when it happened, and we talked about it here recently as well. Kevin McCarthy made some concessions to members of his party within the House of Representatives because he wanted this position so bad that he figuratively sold his soul and put himself in a position where he was the Speaker of the House, but he was not the leader. Why do you say that, Jeff? I say that because he was not really in a position to lead because as soon as he did anything that offended the Freedom Caucus wing of the Republican Party, which is the ultra MAGA right wing of the Republican Party within the House, as soon as he would do one thing that would offend just one of their members, that member then had the right to call for the vote to oust him. And as you well know, that's exactly what happened. Matt Gaetz, congressman from Florida, because Kevin McCarthy worked across the aisle with the Democrats to hammer out a deal to raise the debt ceiling so that the government would not shut down last month. Because he did that, Matt Gaetz then called for his ouster. And as you well know, Kevin McCarthy was ousted from the Speaker of the House position. And the position has been vacant for almost a month now. In the meantime, there's the Speaker Pro Tem. His name is Patrick McHenry. He is a congressman from North Carolina. More on him later in this segment. So since there was no speaker, there was appointed a Speaker Pro Tem, Republican Congressman Patrick McHenry, not Patrick Henry, but Patrick McHenry from North Carolina. He's a Speaker Pro Tem. However, that's not how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to have a Speaker of the House to be the leader of the House, to be the chair over the House. And this Speaker Pro Tem is exactly what it is. Tem being the key word is the abbreviation for temporary. This is not supposed to be a permanent position. But again, we'll get to that later on in this segment. So last week, the Republicans decided that now's the time to come to the floor of the House to vote for the Speaker. Now, prior to this decision, there were two candidates that were floated. One, we talked about this last week on the show, so this is just a very brief review. One was Congressman Steve Scalise from Louisiana, who famously or infamously, however you want to look at it, said in his past that he's, quote, David Duke dressed up. For those of you who don't know who David Duke is and was, he's still living, was in the past, he was the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. All right? Don't make this up, just quoting what Steve Scalise said. He was one of the candidates. If you remember him, he was the one who nearly lost his life when the Republican caucus was practicing for the annual House baseball game a few years ago, and a person came to their practice and shot him, and he nearly died. Okay? So he was one of the candidates in the beginning. The other was Congressman Jim Jordan from Ohio, who is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. And again, I won't go over all of this because we went over this in detail last Saturday, but he, if you remember, is the person who led the Judiciary Committee on in what is this show hosts waste of time trips, field trips is what I call them, to New York City, investigating Southern District of New York, District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Waste of time trip to Fulton County in Atlanta, Fulton County in Georgia rather, which is Atlanta. Waste of time field trip investigating District Attorney of Fulton County, Fonnie Lewis. And the reason that he did this is not because of some impropriety by either one of them, but he did this at the behest of Donald Trump. As you well know, Alvin Bragg is prosecuting Donald Trump in the Stormy Daniels payoff, and Fonnie Lewis is investigating Donald Trump in the whole Georgia fraudulent election that Donald Trump tried to pull off. Where you all, I'm sure, have heard the infamous audio recording of Donald Trump calling the Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger, and asking him to find him 11 million votes. If you remember that. So that was the sole reason that Jim Jordan led these investigations, as these waste of time and taxpayer dollars investigation, as the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. So these are the two candidates. Neither one of them, let's be honest, are very appealing. Guess the lesser of the two evils would have been Steve Scalise, because at least he did support aid to Ukraine and to continue the fight against Vladimir Putin there in Ukraine, where Jim Jordan was part of the wing of the House Republicans that opposed that. All right? So the Republicans caucused with each other, and they came to the decision on Sunday or Monday, that Jim Jordan was going to be their candidate. The vote comes on the House floor. Jim Jordan, first vote, gets 200, which is not enough, because he needs at least 212 to have the majority. 214 to have the majority. So you got 200 the first time around. Hakeem Jeffries, who is the minority leader of the House, because he's the leader of the Democratic wing of the House, minority only because they have the less amount of seats in the House of Representatives right now, got more votes than Jim Jordan, because all of the Democrats voted for Hakeem Jeffries, congressman from New York. So that was the first vote. Got 200 votes. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, there's arm twisting going on. You've got Sean Hannity at Fox News trying to find out who are these people that are opposed to Kevin McCarthy, so they can be exposed on the various broadcasts on Fox News, and threatened with the threat that if you don't get on board, so to speak, that we're going to see that you get primaried in your next election when you run for election. Now, mind you, this is Fox News, and a news organization is supposed to be unbiased. A news organization is not supposed to try to influence members of the House to vote for one speaker over the other. They are there to report news. They are there. They have a talk show like Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham. They are there, yes, to give their opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. But they are not there to try to influence by threatening members of the House with being primary. That's not their job. So it just goes to show you where they're at and who they're carrying the water for, because remember, it's Donald Trump who endorsed Jim Jordan.
Yep.
And it's Donald Trump who wants Jim Jordan as Speaker of the House. So that shows you where Fox is. You thought they would have learned their lesson when they got hit by the almost over $1 billion lawsuit by Dominion voting machines that they won because of the libel, because Fox spread all those lies that are well detailed after the 2020 election. But apparently they still have not learned the lesson. Apparently they're still showing their true colors, and I know what they're doing because they experienced a drop in viewership after they dropped Tucker Carlson off the air, and after they declared that Joe Biden, yes, was the duly elected President of the United States. They saw a drop in viewership because a segment of their viewers, because they had been fed those lies for so long, left them and went to their competitors at One American Network and Newsmax, where they could continue to get the echo chamber of lies that they used to get at Fox News. All right? So they brought forth Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan get enough votes on the first try. 200 votes. Next time they brought Jim Jordan again, Jim Jordan got even less. He got 198 votes. Yesterday, a third vote was taken. So strike one, strike two, strike three. Guess what? Jim Jordan struck out. His total went down again. Didn't increase, but went down to 194. And now the Republicans are searching for a replacement. Brian Donalds was mentioned, and there have been others have been mentioned, but the ones that they are mentioning are not going to get the necessary amount of votes either to become the Speaker of the House. Now, here is the irony and the hypocrisy in the whole Jim Jordan candidacy. Jim Jordan, on January 6th, had several conversations with Donald Trump on the morning of January 6th prior to the riot and attempted coup that we saw at the Capitol building that day. It's 30 after the hour, by the way, 30 after the hour. Several conversations. Now, one of the duties or powers of being Speaker of the House is that you are able to subpoena witnesses to come before Congress to testify regarding various investigations that are going on. Here's the hypocrisy in Jim Jordan seeking to become the Speaker of the House, because this Jim Jordan, as we just stated, had several conversations with Donald Trump on the morning of January 6th, when the January 6th House Committee was formed to investigate what happened on January 6th. Guess what they did, folks? They subpoenaed, you got it, Jim Jordan. Well, then, of course, Jeff, Jim Jordan being a member of the House and being a member of Congress and, now being the chairperson of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he complied with that subpoena and, sorry, wrong answer. No, instead, he defied the subpoena. He never appeared before the 1-6 committee. That's number one. So number one, he was part of what happened on January 6th. The committee had evidence that needed to be corroborated, and of course he did not appear. Number two, what disqualifies him is, as we just said, he defied a congressional subpoena. So how are you going to lead a body which will be issuing subpoenas for witnesses to appear, and you defied a subpoena yourself when you were a member of Congress and refused to appear before a congressional committee investigating January 6th? I mean, come on, you all. It doesn't take a Harvard scholar to see the hypocrisy in that. Stevie Wonder can see the hypocrisy in that. All right? So that disqualifies him, in my view. Also, on the day of January 6th, Jim Jordan, just like all the rest, just like Andrew Clyde, or as we call him on the show, Claude, because that's what he is. The same Andrew Clyde from Georgia who said that January 6th, if you didn't know any better, would look like it was just another tourist excursion. And yet, video on that day showed him barricading the door to keep the tourists out. But Jim Jordan, on January 6th, after the events of that day, after the horrific events of that day, which were broadcast literally worldwide, harkens back to that slogan that was shouted at the 1968 Democratic Convention for those that were protesting in Chicago that night. The whole world's watching. The whole world's watching. The whole world was watching on January 6th. Mm-hmm. Everybody saw the destruction. Everybody saw the violence. Everybody heard the crowd chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Everybody heard once the crowd got in calling for Nancy Pelosi because they wanted to kill her. And, people, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, giving an account as she was hiding in the bathroom of her office about how she literally thought she was going to lose her life that day. Everybody saw that. So you would have thought that when the House reconvened that night, kudos to Nancy Pelosi for doing that, for reconvening the House that night, so that what was interrupted that day, that attempted coup failed to certify the election of Joe Biden, and it was to be certified in the Senate as well. This would-be Speaker of the House. Know what he did after the events of, almost said 9/11, after the events of January 6th? Know what he did, ladies and gentlemen? He voted to decertify the election. Strike 3. And let me just throw strike 4 in here as well. He is to this day yet to say that Joe Biden is the duly elected president of the United States. So he's an election denier. So you got a guy who allegedly, I have to say allegedly because, it hasn't been proven in a court of law, but allegedly was part of the plot on January 6th. Not alleged because it's on record, voted not to certify the election. Not alleged because it's on record, has never said that Joe Biden is the duly elected president of the United States. So for those reasons alone, he is not qualified to be the Speaker of the House. And so therefore, he will no longer be, his name is no longer in nomination. But anytime you have facts, the results of those facts are even deeper still than the facts. And here's the fallout behind this. And here's the irony in the fallout behind all this. Now remember, I told you that people like Sean Hannity and others were pressuring members of the House, Republican members of the House, to vote for Jim Jordan. Oh, by the way, one other thing I forgot to mention. Jim Jordan asked Donald Trump for a pardon. Now the question is, a pardon from what? What did you ask him for a pardon from? For? What did you ask him for a pardon from? Try to say that 5 times without messing it up. What he asked him for a pardon from was, in all likelihood, what was going to be revealed had he testified before the House committee on January 6th. All right? So that's even more evidence as to why he should not be the Speaker of the House and won't be the Speaker of the House. The sad irony, though, people, is that with all of this, with all the facts that I just gave you, and again, this is no kudos to me. These are out there. All you have to do is, go on the internet or, watch cable news networks or what have you to get in-depth coverage of this. The sad fact of all of this, though, is this. 194 Republican members of the House still voted for this man. It just shows you how this party, and again, I'm not playing partisan politics here. I'm looking at the facts. And the facts are this. The one party is a party that at least tries to show some semblance of leaning to wanting to govern towards democracy. I'll say even more than that. A party in the Democratic Party that has shown that they still want to maintain the democratic system, not party. I'm talking about democracy, democratic system that we have in this country. And then you have another party, in the party of the Republican Party, that is a party of chaos, a party that really does not want to govern. This party, at least on the national level, ladies and gentlemen, and listen, you don't have to take my word for it, just look at the facts. I'm not giving you opinion now. These are facts. They're not even trying to govern. They're not trying to govern. Matt Gaetz called for this vote to remove Kevin McCarthy. Now listen, if you're a regular listener of the show, you know I'm no big fan of Kevin McCarthy. We dubbed him Little Kev on this show because we dubbed him as one of the political eunuchs in American politics, and he is. But Matt Gaetz led the charge to get rid of Kevin McCarthy with no exit strategy, with no replacement strategy, if you will, in place. So this is a party, as I said, a party of chaos, because all they want to do is destroy and tear down, and they have no plan of how to govern or how to go forward from there. All right? Then, here's the irony of what's going on as well. Because you have Steve Bannon, who was indicted for money laundering. Steve Bannon, who was pardoned by Donald Trump, because you know what he was doing? He was fraudulently taking money from Trump supporters, telling them to send money that was going to help build the wall on the southern border, and he was pocketing that money, was convicted, and he was pardoned by Trump. You have Steve Bannon on his podcast encouraging Matt Gaetz and others within the House of Representatives to give out the names and home addresses and phone numbers of the Republican congresspeople who were voting against Jim Jordan. And what has happened as a result of that is that there have been death threats that have been given. We're going to talk about this in a moment. But to show you the chaotic nature of this party, there was a shouting match that broke out between Kevin McCarthy and Matt Gaetz. First, Kevin McCarthy in his first statement tried to blame the 8 Republicans who voted against him that allowed him to be voted out of the Speaker of the House position, and the Democrats. Like the Democrats were supposed to support him and vote for him, even though, as we well documented on this show a couple of weeks ago, he did nothing to garner their trust. But then he changed his tune and basically, rightfully so, blamed Matt Gaetz and those 8, the gang of 8, as he called them, Republicans who voted to take him out. And him and Matt Gaetz had a shouting match on the floor of the House of Representatives within a Republican caucus. But the result of this is this. This is now what's going on. You now have Republican representatives within the House who voted against Jim Jordan being threatened. They're being threatened. Representative Marionette Miller Meek of Iowa received death threats. Okay? And then not only that, but a representative from Nebraska, his wife was receiving death threats and harassing text messages and death threats to both herself and her husband. That's Representative Steve Womack of Arkansas received death threats as well, simply because he voted against Jim Jordan. He received death threats. See, what they do not realize, or maybe they do realize, actually, let me rephrase that. When people like Steve Bannon and Matt Gaetz and Donald Trump, that's who they take their cue from, tell or make these threats as they do, or release these people's names and address and what have you, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They are responsible for the actions that are taking place against these individuals. But listen, here's the irony in all of this. The irony in all of this, folks, is that this is a classic example of the chickens coming home to roost. Because these Republican members of the House of Representatives that are now being threatened, be it by text message, be it by harassing telephone calls, be it by Steve Bannon encouraging Matt Gaetz and others to publish their names and addresses, be it by Sean Hannity and others at Fox News working behind the scenes, threatening. These are the same people, though, who were silent when Donald Trump was doing the same things. When Donald Trump was doing this to the two women in Atlanta, the two black women in Atlanta that were simply doing their job working at the Fulton County Board of Election. Remember that? How people showed up to their homes, marching in front of their homes. They couldn't even go to the grocery store. They were being threatened because Donald Trump said their names and they got their addresses. Where were these individuals in? They weren't saying anything then when these individuals' lives were literally being threatened. They were silent. These were two people that were doing their job. They weren't committing election fraud, which was proven. Silence. Where were they? Where was their outrage when the members of the Capitol Police came before the Congress that they sit in and testified about what happened to them on January 6th? They were either silent or they sided with their party. Where was their outrage when threats were made against Cassidy Hutchinson, former worked under Mark Meadows, who's National Security Advisor under Trump, by the way, is under indictment right now by Fonnie Lewis. When she testified before the January 6th committee last year, receiving death threats, harassment, Donald Trump spreading lies about her and calling her out. I didn't hear any protestations from any of these people. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a classic example, if you will, of the chickens coming home to roost. The chickens coming home to roost. The chickens coming home to roost. Because first, they came after the poll workers, and you were silent. First, they came after the people that were counting votes in Maricopa County in Arizona, and you were silent. First, they made death threats to Secretary of State Raffensperger in Georgia, who, by the way, is a Republican, and you were silent. Then they made threats against Alvin Bragg and Judge Chunkin and Judge Ingram. Jack Smith, Fonnie Lewis. You were silent. But now, when the chickens have come home to roost, these same people who you were silent when they were threatening others, now have turned it around and start to threaten you and your family. Now you're talking about it. This is as I said, is a classic example of the chickens coming home to roost. This is an example, if you will, of the parable of reaping and sowing. The type of seeds you sow, when, not if, when harvest time comes, is the crop you're going to reap.
When you look at the 80s and I...
When you sow to the wind, you're going to reap the whirlwind. And so when you sow seeds of discontent, when you sow seeds of apathy, when you sow seeds of going along to get along, when you sow seeds of agreement with others being attacked like that, when the harvest comes, then the crop you reap is going to come right back on you. And now you are under the same threats. Now you have to take the same precautions for your family and your loved ones as these individuals had to take and are still taking, for that matter, now. So when the shoe's on the other foot, when the finger is pointed in your direction, when it is your family and your livelihood that's under threat, then all of a sudden, it's not so comfortable anymore. Then all of a sudden, you start to realize the monster that has been created. And that monster that has been created is the monster that is still looming over us today. The monster that is cast its shadow over the entire American governmental system, especially on the federal level, but it has leaked down to state and local levels as well. And that is the monster that you created, the Frankenstein monster, if you will, that you created, that you thought that you can control. But just like Frankenstein, it's gotten out of control. And that monster is called Trumpism. And as we just said, you were okay with it, or even if you weren't okay with it, you remained silent. So you gave tacit approval to it by your silence. You were okay with it in all the instances that I listed before. You were okay with it. There's another, yes, thank you. There's another thing that came to my mind. None of you spoke out and condemned when the man broke into the home of then Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, looking for her, broke into her home in the San Francisco area, wanting to do harm to her, and because she wasn't there, brutally assaulted her 83-year-old husband, and you were silent. In fact, maybe none of you who now under death threat and have been harassed did this, but members of your party did so, and you didn't chastise them for it. Little Kev, for one, you didn't do it as leader. But some of you individuals didn't do it either. Didn't chastise them for it. In fact, some of you made jokes talking about, are you sure that this was a break-in and wasn't a quarrel between homosexual lovers? Yeah, you said it. You might have forgotten it, but guess what? I didn't. I know, and you know. So even though you may not have said it personally, even though that may not have been and hopefully is not where your sentiments and your thoughts regarding this, by you being silent, then you are giving tacit approval. Your silence is taken as approval. You have to have, and I've been saying this for the next 2 weeks that I'm on the air here, I'm going to keep saying this until the end of this broadcast, the end of this show. You have to have the political courage. The late President John F. Kennedy wrote a book, Profiles in Courage. I suggest that every member of the House of Representatives on both sides of the aisle, I suggest that every member of the Senate of the United States on both sides of the aisle, if you have not done so already, and if you have done so, do it again just as a refresher. Get the book, Profiles in Courage, and read that book. Because sometimes you are going to have to take a stand, a courageous stand that may go against the norms and the wishes of your party to do the right thing, to do what is best for the American people. You are listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. It is 5 before the hour. We're going to take a break, and we will be back with you after the top of the 4 o'clock hour. I'm sorry, after the top of the 4 o'clock hour. With the rest of our program, we'll be doing an NBA preview. We're going to give our thoughts on what President Biden said. So we'll talk about that. We'll also take your calls. We're looking for your calls at 216-939-5087.
Final score of the Ohio State-Penn State game, Ohio State 20, Penn State 12 with a last-minute touchdown. The two-point conversion was failed by Penn State. Final score, Ohio State 20, Penn State 12.
Good. And I'll go on record. I'm glad I was wrong because, I didn't pick the game on the show last week, and I should have, but I did pick Penn State 28-23. So gladly I was wrong. Be back at you in just a few minutes. Thanks, Marie.
Mm-hmm. Has violence happened to you or your family? Violence can affect your lives in all types of ways. It can affect the way you eat, sleep, it causes you to lose focus, feel angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape. But we're here to tell you that violence doesn't have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life. Today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, emotional support, and a whole lot more. So do not let violence control you. You can break free, and TRC can help. Give them a call at 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They offer real help for real needs in real time. They can give you the tools to rebuild your life and your health. Call today. They're free, they're 24/7, and confidential. So if you want out and don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence starting today. Call today. Get the help you need today. 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center, Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. And finally, our History 365. We'd like to introduce some and we introduce the others. Charles B. Brooks, born 1865, left this earth in 1956. He was an American inventor born in Virginia. By the 1890s, he was a resident of Newark, New Jersey. Besides inventing books, was a porter for the Pullman Palace Car Company. Unlike other sweepers at the time in the 1890s, Brooks sweeper was the first self-propelled street sweeping truck. See. His design had revolving brushes attached to the front fender, and the brushes were interchangeable so that when the snow fell, scrapers would or could be attached for snow removal. He received a patent for his invention on March 17, 1896. A few months later, on May 12, 1896, he patented a dust-proof collection bag for the street sweeper. Although little information is available about his life, we do know that funding for the production for his sweeper was provided by George M. Halstead and Plummer S. Page, and we'll talk about them later. The production took place in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where each sweeper was priced at around $2,000. It proved to be so successful that Pennsylvania state government gave a $100,000 contract to the manufacturing company. The maintenance superintendent of Buffalo, New York, was also so impressed with Brooks' design that he adopted the model for his city. Brooks also received a third patent for what was called the ticket punch. On October 31st, 1893, patent number 507,672, an early example of a paper punch unique for its time because unlike hole punchers of today, his had a built-in receptacle that could catch the brown pieces of waste paper there and prevents littering. So yeah, listen, I tell you all the time, you know, if you don't want to hit up a library, if you can't, because we understand, you know, things happen in life's, you know, Google. Knowing your history is knowing your now. And now back to Jeff Doggett with the right side.
Thank you, Marie. And once again, you're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure don't bring the noise. This station is powered by Google and it's sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines and also sponsored by dedicated senior medical center, better health care for seniors. One thing before we get into what we're going to do here in the second hour, I did mention several times last hour that I was going to get back to Patrick McHenry. So my solution then for what's going on in the House of Representatives is to extend the powers of Pro Tem Patrick McHenry. And I think this is something that can be done bipartisanly, although the caveat to that is that this was tried earlier in the week and not enough Republicans got on board with it. But I am of the thought, or at least a hope anyway, that as the Republicans continue to see that the candidates that they put up, be it Scalise, Jordan, Donalds, whoever they're going to come up with, they have to come to the realization and the conclusion that none of these guys are going to garner enough votes to become Speaker of the House. So the Democrats seem willing to make a deal regarding McHenry, so expand his powers uh, uh, and allow him at least to continue on and with expanded powers to rule over the House of Representatives until a candidate can be agreed upon where that would be able to get enough votes in order to be the speaker. But listen, people, November 17th is looming. Now you ask, what's November 17th? November 17th is not the week before Thanksgiving, although that's what it is. November 17th is the day that unless we expand this debt ceiling, the government's going to shut down. And without a Speaker of the House, the government's going to shut down. So we need to do something. If you expand the powers of McHenry, at least he'll be in place where a vote could be taken then to extend the debt limit so that the debt ceiling rather, so that the government will not shut down. If the government shuts down, that's going to have dire ramifications for this country. Now, there are some who believe that there are members within the House of Representatives that do want to see it shut down. Again, they are members of, as I said in the last hour, the Chaos Party. So I just want you to keep that in mind. In case, you think this is, just all waste of time, this is all talk and stuff that I'm not even interested in. Okay, you can think that, but if the government shuts down, you're going to know it. Trust me, you will know it. You do not want the government to shut down. So I'm in favor of Patrick McHenry having his authority expanded, bipartisan agreement, so that we can get something done to prevent this government from shutting down on November 17th. Now, as I said, you were listening to No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. But there are some outstanding programs on this network. And let me just go through them very quickly. There's something that the broadcasting on this network runs the gamut. So there's something that interests you. If sports and politics don't interest you, I get it. This isn't for everyone, I get it. But there are programs on here that pique the interest of everyone. There's a program on here that would speak to an area of interest that you have. For example, on Mondays, we call Mondays Motor Mind Mondays. And Mondays, we kick it off with, in my opinion, one of the best shows, not only on this network, and this is not to denigrate any other show on this network because they're all good, but one of the best shows, not only on this network, but in my opinion, network broadcasting, period. When I listen to this show, I call it like listening to Face the Nation on the radio, and that's Black Entropy, and that's hosted from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Mondays by Coffee. Then, on that same day, if you want to talk sports and issues of the day and what's going on socially, listen to Hustle and Wax Flow from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. They do it in a very unique way, in a unique style that you would find entertaining. And then later that same evening, we have the program that has been on the air since there's been a No Static Radio, and that's Drag Racing, the Ultimate Sport, from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m. with Ken and Denise, and they represent Kudra. So that's drag racing. So if you're into that, you can listen to that. And then from 7 to 9 on Monday, we also have the program on from 7 to 9 on Monday, hosted by Nobles Khan, and this is I'm sorry, am I reading this wrong? More Than Meets the Eye.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. More Than Meets the Eye, hosted by Nobles Khan Bay, every Monday, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So you see, Monday is full. You got Black Entropy from 11 to 1, You've got Hustle and Wax Flow from 2 to 4. Then you've got the drag racing, the ultimate sport from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m. And then you've got More Than Meets the Eye with Nobles Con from 7 to 9 p.m. So you see there's a variety of shows that you can listen to on Monday. Then on Tuesday, we have what they call the Testimonial Tuesdays, Body Talk. Another, and again, these are my opinion, but another one of the most outstanding shows on this network. I always say that this show is like listening to 60 Minutes on the air. And Body Talk from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. hosted by Al Bridges. Then you have the Gospel Music Show from 7 to 9 p.m. hosted by the Reverend Doctor. Then on Wednesday, we have House Party Wednesdays. Lupus Straight Up with CC from 2 p.m. to 4, hosted by Cecilia and JJ. Speakeasy Radio Show from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., hosted by Ron Chilston, who is bringing in great numbers and doing wonderful things with his show. Then on Thursdays, we have Turn It Up Thursday. You have the Rap Show, RAP Radio Show, hosted by Ryan A. Polk, hence the rap, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Then you have The Warrior, the Solomon Polk Radio Show, hosted on the air from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Then on Fantastic Fridays, you have the FAN Radio Show, hosted by Kiana and Guy from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Then on Saturday, Situational Saturday, you have Pumping It Up with Will. That's a bodybuilding show hosted by Will Childs from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. You have the Entertainment Plug hosted by J-Rock from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Then from 1 to 3, you have Real Talk with Reese, hosted by Reese, a.k.a. Tanya Thomas. And 3 to 5, you have The Right Side. So as you see, you have a smorgasbord, if you will, cornucopia of shows that you can choose from that run the gamut from entertainment, industry, to sports, to the political world, to social events, and all of this drag racing, bodybuilding, all under one umbrella. So there's something, I'm sure, there that would interest all of you. And this is on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. The NBA season opens this Tuesday. And it just seems like yesterday that the Denver Nuggets were being crowned the champions of the NBA, that they were receiving the Larry O'Brien Trophy, and that Nikola Jokic was receiving his most valuable player of the finals. But that was back in June. And yes, that time has flown by. I know it has, because summer is my favorite time of year. So if you all know me, I always say summer is too short. But now we're at the dawn of another season. So what we're going to do here in the beginning of our second hour is that we're going to do an NBA preview, where I'm going to look at what I think are the top 4 teams in each conference, talk about the key additions and the key losses to each one of those teams. Then for the rest of the conferences, name who we think are going to make the playoffs. And at the end of the preview, we will give our conference champions, aka those who will meet in the NBA Finals, I should say, i.e., not aka, i.e., those who will meet in the NBA Finals. We will give who we think is going to be the Rookie of the Year this year in the NBA, who's going to be the most valuable player, who's going to be the Defensive Player of the Year, and who we think is going to be crowned NBA champions next June. You all realize the length of the NBA season starts here in October when the baseball play. Oh, let me say this too before we get into the NBA. These 2 championship series, both the NLCS and the ALCS, have really been great to watch. I'm going to deal with the NLCS first.
Excuse me, 1 second. Can I send out a huge congratulations? I'm good friends with Michael Colson, who is the older brother of Sidney Colson. Just send a big shout out and congratulations to the Las Vegas Aces for winning the WNBA championship.
Sure can. Yes, congratulations to the Las Vegas Aces. Had the best record in the league all season and are back-to-back WNBA champions. But the NLCS and the ALCS. Now let me talk about the NLCS first. Now nobody gave the Diamondbacks a chance. If you listen to all the pundits, be it on MLB Network, be it on various sports radio outlets, both locally and nationally, nobody gave the Diamondbacks a chance. In fact, there were some who were saying that they are, even though they're not fans of the Phillies personally, they are rooting for the Phillies because they don't even want to see the Diamondbacks in the World Series because, in their opinion, nobody's interested in them and nobody wants to see it. Everybody wants to see the stars. Well, if you're stars, then Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber and Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, etc., then step up. JT Realmuto, all these guys, Trey Turner on the Phillies, step up and win the series. Because you guys are heavy favorites. Everybody talks about how since June the Braves have been the best team in baseball. The Phillies have been the best team in baseball. They knocked off the 104-win Braves. How winning in Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia is next to impossible. Blah, 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 blah. And that at best, the Diamondbacks were going to win only one game. Well, the Phillies did handle business in the first two games of the series in Philadelphia and really just pummeled the Diamondbacks, especially in game 2, beat them 10-0. But a strange thing happened once they got to Chase Bank Stadium in Phoenix. And that is in game 3. The Diamondbacks won game 3 in walk-off fashion, 2-1. And everybody said, oh, well, okay, we'll chalk that up. We didn't think the Phillies were going to sweep anyway, and we'll give the Diamondbacks one game. But last night, the Phillies were ahead 5-2 going into the 7th inning in the 8th inning last night. They were ahead 5-2 going into, the 7th inning. The Diamondbacks scored 1 run in the 7th. Still no big deal. 5-3 going into the 8th. The Phillies had to shut down bullpen supposedly with Gregory Soto and Craig Kimbrell and Jose Alvarado, and that there's no way the Diamondbacks have never in their history of their franchise, the long history of the Diamondbacks. Folks, the Diamondbacks didn't come into existence until 95. But anyway, the Diamondbacks have never come back in the history of their franchise down 3 runs in a playoff game. And against the vaunted Philadelphia bullpen, the Diamondbacks scored 1 in the 7th to cut the lead to 5-3. Then they scored 3 in the 8th. 2-run homer tied it at 5, and a 2-out single put them ahead 6-5. And then their closer, Craig Sewald, came in, shut down the Phillies in the 9th, and lo and behold, now the series is tied at 2. Game 5 is tonight in Phoenix. Zach Gallen, the ace of the Diamondbacks, is going in game 1. The game tonight, he was the loser of game 1. And the Phillies ace, Zach Wheeler, who won game 1 and has been dominant in the playoffs, was dominant against the Marlins in the wild card round, dominated the Braves in the DS, and really they dominated the Diamondbacks in game 1. He's going tonight for the Phillies. I personally still think Philadelphia is going to win, but I hope the Diamondbacks win. Only because, not that I don't like the Phillies, I don't feel one way or the other about them, but only because I want to see all of these experts with egg on their face. I want to see the networks, because even though the networks can't come out and state it, Fox, who will carry the World Series, can't come out and state it, but behind closed doors, they are sweating bullets because they want the Phillies to win this series because they don't want the Diamondbacks in the World Series. I really hope that the Diamondbacks come back and win this series. Do I think they're going to do it? No. But then again, I didn't think Ohio State was going to beat Penn State today either. And 20-12 Ohio State. So that just shows you that, yes, I am wrong sometimes, about my pick. So I picked Philly last week. I still think they're going to win, but I'm hoping like heck that the Diamondbacks rally and win this series to shut up all of the experts, to shut up Christopher Magdal Russo, to shut up Steve Torrey, to shut up all the people on MLB Network and all the national pundits on ESPN and all the other outlets who don't want the Diamondbacks, who gave them no chance against Milwaukee. They swept Milwaukee, the 90-win Brewers, who gave them really no chance against the Dodgers, the 100-win Dodgers. And not only did they win that series, but swept them too, and said, well, there's no way they can beat the Phillies. So I'm pulling for them. I still think Philadelphia wins the series and probably in 6 games. But come on, Diamondbacks. The ALCS has been a classic. The Texas Rangers won games 1 and 2 in Houston. By the way, those of you who don't know, the Houston Astros, even though they are division winners of the National League West this year, and this is their 7th straight trip to the American League Championship Series, and they are the defending World Series champions from last year. Did you know that the Houston Astros had a losing record at home this year? Not just during the playoffs, but during the regular season as well, that they were sub 500 at home this year. Losing series is getting swept at home by the likes of the Kansas City Royals once, just to give you an example. Kansas City was a 100-plus loss team this year. And once the playoffs started, they were 1-1 at home against Minnesota, and they're 0-2 at home against Texas. Texas won game 1 and 2 in Houston, coming home for games 3, 4, and 5, where they had to really feel good about themselves because they knew that all we have to do is win 2 out of 3 at home, and we're going to the World Series, where they have one of the best home records this year. The Rangers were the top scoring team in the American League, top home run hitting team in the American League, one of the best offenses not only in the American League but in baseball, but there are those Astros. The Houston Astros came off the deck. They won game 3 in Texas the other night. I believe 5-2 was the score. Then on game 4, they pummeled the Rangers, beat the Rangers 10-5. And the game was not even as close as the score was. Then yesterday, the game was 2-1 going into the bottom of the 7th inning. Justin Verlander, who will be in Cooperstown 5 years after he retires, was on the mound for Houston and he was dealing. And the Rangers had, who's proven to be a big-time pitcher, especially playoff time for them, former Yankee, former Cardinal, Jordan Montgomery on the mound for them, and he was dealing to his pitcher's duel. Astros took the lead 2-1 in the top of the 6th. Rangers come into the bottom of the 6th. First man up gets a single. Justin Verlander retires. The next man up rather gets a single. Justin Verlander retires the next hitter. And then Adolis Garcia, the Rangers' home run leader, steps to the plate and hits a no-doubt home run to left field, one that he styled and profiled on. As he stood there and admired his work, walked down the line, then slammed his bat into the ground and yelled some things at the Ranger dugout, took his time circling the bases. Now the Rangers are up 4-2. They've got their bullpen going, their 3 best relief pitchers going. They get to the top of the 9th. But before we get there, the Rangers bat in their half of the 8th inning. And Garcia comes up again against Astros standout relief pitcher Brian Abreu. The first pitch drills Adolis Garcia in the back. Now, do I think he threw at him on purpose? No, because you don't do that in this situation. This is a playoff game, folks. If you want to send a message or get back at him, you do that in spring training next year or a regular season game next year. So I don't think he did it on purpose. But the Rangers and the Astros have history earlier this year of having a brawl. Adolis Garcia turns and starts mouthing, saying things to the Astros catcher, Maldonado. Next thing you know, the bench is clear. Garcia is ejected. So is Brian Abreu. And Astros manager Dusty Baker is ejected because he's protesting the fact that his pitcher was ejected without a warning call. Now, again, I don't think that he was throwing at him on purpose. So you have those fireworks going on, which led to a longer than usual inning, which led to the Jose Leclerc, who was the Rangers relief pitcher, came in the eighth inning, got the last out of the eighth, then had to sit a while between innings because of the brawl. Comes into the ninth. First two guys get on for the Astros. Single walk. Up to the plate steps Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve is one of the most clutch hitters in baseball, has tied for the most home runs in postseason history in baseball. He steps to the plate, and on the second pitch he sees from the Rangers closer, with the crowd going wild in Globe Life Park there in Arlington, the home of the Rangers, thinking that their team is about to go up 3-2, which would place them one win away from going back to the World Series, a place they hadn't been since 2010 and 2011. Hadn't even made the playoffs since 2016. Jose Altuve deposits that pitch into the left field seats for a 3-run homer. The Astros get off the deck. Now they're ahead 5-4. Their closer, after a high wire act in the bottom of the ninth, closes out the game. Astros win 5-4, go back to Houston up 3-2. Folks, the Astros are a team like Dracula. You have to put a stake through their heart to beat them. Their experience and their 7 years in a row making the American League Championship Series, going to the World Series 4 times, nothing phases them. The stage will never be too big for them. So you have to put a stake in their heart. You have to have 5-6 run lead on them going into the ninth inning to feel secure. That, in all likelihood, deflated the Rangers. Now it's up to their manager, Bruce Bochy, to get them back on track, which I think he will. He's one of the best managers in baseball. Will be in the Hall of Fame one day. So I'm really looking forward to Game 6 tomorrow in Houston. I'm hoping it goes 7 games. So I'm hoping the Rangers win tomorrow. They've got Nathan Eovaldi going, who's one of their top starters, against Franmil Valdez for the Astros, who has not pitched well at all in the postseason. So it sets up the likelihood for Game 7 on Monday night at Minute Maid Park in Houston, which I hope to see. I hope it does happen. I'll be rooting for the Rangers tomorrow to continue the trend that only the road teams in this American League Championship Series have won. A home team has not won a game, and until the 6th inning last night, a home team had not even led a game in this series yet. So I'm hoping that trend continues tomorrow, only because I want to see Game 7 on Monday. So these are some very exciting championship series in both leagues. The fans at all the parks have just been out of control, which made the atmosphere even that much more exciting. And like I said, I'm hoping for a Diamondbacks comeback to win that series, although I still think the Phillies are going to win it. And I'm hoping the Rangers win tomorrow to force a Game 7 on Monday. Now, on to the NBA. So we look at the Eastern Conference first. The team that I think is going to be the number one seed in the East this year was, to no surprise, because they were the number one seed not only in the East last year, but they were the number one seed in the NBA last year, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, the key losses to the Bucks, they lost All-Star point guard Drew Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And their key addition is All-Star guard Damian Lillard. Drew Holiday was a part of that three-way deal where Milwaukee sent him to Portland, and then Portland sent him on to Boston. We'll talk more about that when we get to the Celtics. So those are the key losses, key additions. It's going to take a minute for them to mesh, talking about Giannis and Dame. But the Bucks have picked up a cold-blooded, end-of-the-game assassin in Dame Lillard. Now, the only problem with Dame is that he has had issues with staying healthy over the last few seasons. He's missed a lot of games over the last few years. In fact, if I were to check the record, he's probably missed as many, if not more, games than he's played. But assuming that he's healthy, assuming that they still have Bobby Portis, they still have Chris Middleton, who they need healthy as well. They still have Brook Lopez, who finished third in voting last year as Defensive Player of the Year. So with Giannis and Brook Lopez, Giannis a former DPOY, and Brook Lopez finishing third in the DPOY voting last year, they can still be good on the defensive end. Now, they're not going to be as good because they get a drop-off from Drew Holiday to Damian Lillard, and Chris Middleton has battled knee issues. They have a new coach this year as well, and I look for the Bucks to finish first in the East, to be the number one seed in the East. And not only in the East, I look for them once again to repeat, to be the number one seed in the NBA. Again, assuming that they can stay healthy, and especially the day I'm talking about Dame Lillard. The number two seed in the East are the Boston Celtics. The key loss is Marcus Smart, who many would agree was the heart and soul, was in the heartbeat of the Celtics. He went to Memphis. More on him when we get to the Western Conference. Malcolm Brogdon, who was another backup point guard, they lost. They lost Robert Williams, who was the big rim protector, rim defender, and Grant Williams, who was a three-point shooter. Those are their key losses. But their key additions to the team were Drew Holiday, as we mentioned just a moment ago, and Kristaps Porzingis. The question in Boston this year is twofold. Number one, is this the year that Jason Tatum takes the next step and becomes the MVP of the league? Also, how much is this team going to miss Marcus Smart and the intangibles he brought? Now, when I look at Drew Holiday, I look at a player whose skill set is similar, if not even slightly better than Marcus Smart. So I think the acquisition and the addition of Drew Holiday is going to minimize somewhat the loss of Marcus Smart. But the Celtics, with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on the wings, with Kristaps Porzingis, another three-point shooter. Now, Kristaps Porzingis is 7'5", but, he's never been mistaken for the greatest defensive player in the league, nor rim protector. But in this system with the Celtics, he's going to have to play on the defensive end. They still have old man Al Horford there. We'll see how much he still has left in the tank. But this has to be the year for the Celtics that they not only advance to the NBA Finals, but I'm sure in Boston they're thinking that this is the year that they have a very good shot of winning it. Well, we'll see. We'll see when we get to the end of this what we think about that thought. The third team, and I spent a lot of time agonizing over this. And the reason I spent the time agonizing over this is because it would be very easily to say the third best team in the NBA Eastern Conference is the Philadelphia 76ers with Joel Embiid, with Tobias Harris, with Tyrese Maxey. But the elephant in the room is James Harden. Let me talk about James Harden for a moment. Here's a guy who, no matter where he is, seems to find a way not to be happy. He was in Houston. He didn't want to be in Houston. And when his tenure in Houston, he wanted Chris Paul there. Then he couldn't play with Chris Paul, so Chris Paul had to leave. Then he got Russell Westbrook in there. He couldn't play with Russell Westbrook anymore, so Russell Westbrook had to leave. The Rockets never got to the finals. The closest they came was in the 2017-2018 season when, by the way, they had home court advantage against the Warriors and couldn't close the deal in the NBA Finals that year. So he wasn't happy in Houston. He forced his way out of Houston. Then he got to Brooklyn. He wanted to get to Brooklyn because he wanted so bad to play with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. He got to Brooklyn. Then all of a sudden he wasn't happy in Brooklyn anymore. He pouted there, and he didn't want to play there anymore. He and Kyrie Irving fell out with each other. He didn't want to play with Kyrie Irving anymore, so he wanted out of there. So what did the Nets do? They accommodated him, and they traded him for another disgruntled player from Philadelphia by the name of Ben Simmons. Traded him to Philadelphia. So now he's back reunited with Doc Rivers. He's there with Joel Embiid. He's finally got the big man he never had in Houston, and big man he never had in Brooklyn, never had in his career, and all of this, and surrounded by a good young talent like Tyrese Maxey, nice nucleus, as I said, with Tobias Harris, and at the time Georgie Name coming off the bench. Nice team. Joel Embiid, MVP last year, top 5 player in the league. And what did he do? Got in the playoffs last year and literally quit. Mm-hmm. James Harden quit on his teammates against the Boston Celtics last year. Pouted. Didn't want to play for Doc Rivers anymore. Mm-hmm. Forced Doc Rivers out in Philadelphia. Because James Harden gave hints that he didn't want to play under Doc Rivers anymore. Blaming Doc Rivers for what happened to him. Didn't take any of the blame. Didn't do the Michael Jackson, look at the man in the mirror and look at the fact that James Harden, you quit on your teammates. So then you didn't opt out. You opted into your contract. Why? Because you opted in thinking that you were once again going to get your wish because you wanted to be traded. This time you wanted to go to the LA Clippers. And because Philadelphia didn't trade you to the Clippers because there wasn't a deal that would be beneficial to them, memo to James Harden. The Sixers are not in business to please you. The Sixers are in business to make the best team possible that they can win a title. The Sixers are in business to try to surround Joel Embiid with as much talent as possible so that they can win a title so that he won't walk when his time comes up. They're not in the business to please James Harden. So what did James Harden do? Because Philadelphia did not trade him to the Clippers like he wanted to go, then he comes out this summer and says that the GM, Daryl Morey, who, by the way, had him in Houston, who, by the way, got him traded for him to come to Philadelphia, by the way, gave him everything he wanted in Houston. He didn't want to play there anymore because Daryl Morey lied to him. So now the Sixers are between a rock and a hard place. Because they got a guy on the team that doesn't want to be there, that's been a malingerer in his career in the past, when he's in a place where he doesn't want to be, he showed up to Houston grossly out of shape. Now they start dubbing him instead of James Harden. They start calling him James Larden. Okay?
Well.
He pouted and whined his way out of Brooklyn. But now Philly's stuck. Because the Clippers wanted Harden, but they don't want to trade Philadelphia what Philly wants. They're saying Philly's asking too much. So the deal's not made. So the question is, what's going to happen? There once was a movie called The Philadelphia Story. What's going to be the Philadelphia story this year? Because that's a very volatile situation. Because James Harden can sabotage a team. We know it because he's done it past. He sabotaged Houston. He sabotaged Brooklyn.
Yep.
Philly is in a precarious position that if it doesn't look like they're going to win a championship, then when Joel Embiid's contract is up, he can start making noise that he wants to leave. And then if he leaves, then they're going to have to start all over again. So I'm very reluctant to put Philadelphia third. I'm very close to putting the Knicks there third because I got the Knicks fourth in the conference. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to change what I had originally picked. I'm picking the Knicks to be the third seed in the East this year with Jalen Brunson, with Julius Randle, with their entire roster. The Knicks won with a fifth seed last year, won their first round series against the Cleveland Cavaliers last year, and then bowed out to Miami in the conference semis in 6 games. So I'm going to go with New York this year. I've got New York as a third seed this year in the East. I'm going to drop Philly to 4. And I'm only putting them there because of Joel Embiid, who, by the way, has to stay healthy, who, by the way, can't pout himself, who, by the way, can't disappear like he disappeared in those games last year in the Boston series. But James Harden quit. I don't think Joel Embiid quit on his team. So I've got them 4. Now the rest, you got Cleveland, Miami, Brooklyn, Atlanta, 5 through 8. Dark horse team in the Eastern Conference. I've got 2 dark horse teams in the Eastern Conference as playoff teams, not dark horse teams and win the conference. I mean, come on, I'm not crazy here. But my 2 dark horse teams that I have in the Eastern Conference this year, and this is based on health, are the Washington Wizards. Yes, I know they traded Bradley Beal, but they still have Kyle Kuzma. This can be a breakout year for him. They got Tyus Jones from Memphis. And if you follow the Grizzlies, when Ja Morant was out, which was a lot over the last couple of years for various reasons, played really well. You got Jordan Poole, got him from the Warriors, so he's out of Draymond's shadow. He doesn't have to worry about Draymond Green punching him in the face. So I think the Wizards can be a 7th seed this year if they stay healthy. Another team that I have as a dark horse team that I think can make the playoffs this year are the Charlotte Hornets, and that's based only on these 3 factors. 1, what is going to be the legal status of Mikal Bridges? As you know, he's having his legal issues because of domestic violence. 2, can LaMelo Ball finally stay healthy? And 3, what kind of impact is rookie from Alabama, the 4th overall pick in the draft this year, Brandon Miller, who I like? What kind of impact he's going to have this year? So I look at those teams as possible dark horse teams, along with the Pacers as well. Can be a dark horse team in the East. So that's the Eastern Conference. Top 4 in the East. Milwaukee 1, Boston 2, New York 3, Philadelphia 4, 5 through 8, Cleveland, Atlanta. Let me just take your pick. Brooklyn. What order they're going to finish? I'm going to give you my prediction too on what I think the Cleveland Cavaliers record is going to be this year, since I am in Cleveland. I do have thoughts on that. But let me get to the Western Conference. So in the West, the number 1 seed I have again are the defending champion Denver Nuggets with perennial MVP, the Joker, Nikola Jokic. They're coming off the high of winning the title last year. They've got that experience going for them now. Now they did have key losses. They did have key losses in Bruce Brown, who was big in the playoffs and in the finals for them last year, as well as Jeff Green. But they still have the Joker. They still have Jamal Murray. They're going to have to keep Mr. Porter Jr. healthy this year. Their bench might not be as deep, but then again, you don't know what surprises they have there either. I like Denver. I like Denver to be the number 1 seed in the West. And all these picks, keep in mind, are based on the health of said players. Okay, obviously, if Jokic goes down for the season, then they're not going to be the number 1 seed. So all of these predictions are based on key players staying healthy. The number 2 seed in the West are the Los Angeles Lakers. The key acquisitions, the Lakers were very busy in the offseason. First of all, they re-upped Rui Hachimura, who they got last year in a trade with the Wizards. They also re-upped Jared Vanderbilt, the defensive specialist, and they also re-upped they also picked up Taurean Prince and Christian Wood. Christian Wood is a big that can shoot the 3. And they re-upped D'Angelo Russell. So those were key pickups. Obviously, the key to the Lakers this year is the health of Anthony Davis and the consistency of Anthony Davis. They gave Anthony Davis a big contract extension. You may be saying you haven't mentioned LeBron yet. Well, it goes without saying. LeBron is coming into his 21st season. LeBron has had more health issues, however, over the last few years than he ever had early in his career, which is to be expected. LeBron will be 39 years old this December. So even though he's shown very little signs of slowing down, right now, the bellwether of that team has to be Anthony Davis. Darvin Ham in my opinion, did a magnificent job coaching them last year. Austin Reeves came out of nowhere last year. They dubbed him White Mamba because they compared his killer instinct to Kobe Bryant.
White Mamba, though.
Yeah, that's what they called him. They called him the White Mamba there in L.A. And his teammates gave him that name. So the Lakers are deep. They're well coached. They are experienced. But at least for the regular season anyway, I'm putting them just a notch below the Nuggets. The number 3 seed in the East that I have are the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix key loss, they were DeAndre Ayton, who they traded to the Portland Trailblazers. The key addition, of course, was Bradley Beal. Was the biggest addition, but they filled out their roster with some good role players like Yusuf Nurkic that they got from Portland in the DeAndre Ayton deal. They still have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker to go along with Bradley Beal, so they've got that big 3. As I said, they filled in their bench. So I like Phoenix. Again, they've got players that have had health issues throughout their career, i.e. Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. But this should be a very formidable team, especially come playoff time. because you kind of figure by that time the big three would have figured out how to play with one another. And keep in mind that this was the only team last year that won more than one game against the Nuggets. Just keep that in mind, where the Suns won 2 games in that series against the Nuggets last year. The 4 seed in the West are the LA Clippers. Okay? I've got the Clippers, the 4th seed. The key there with them, as it always is the health of one Kawhi Leonard. And it seems like we say this every year. Every year. But if Kawhi Leonard can stay healthy, which I know is a big if Kawhi Leonard can play more than 65 games this year, which would be a huge upgrade from the past. If Paul George can stay healthy this year, the Clippers have a deep team that's one of the most well-coached teams with the underrated Ty Lue, one of the best coaches in the NBA, in my opinion. But the frustrating and the maddening thing about the Clippers is the availability or lack thereof of one Kawhi Leonard, and to a lesser extent, Paul George. And if they bring James Harden in, my prayers are with Ty Lue. But if they do bring James Harden in there, besides me praying for Ty Lue because he's going to have to take industrial-sized Tylenols with Harden on the team, if Harden fits in and is willing to subjugate his game, as he did at times with the Sixers, come playoff time, if all the pieces and parts are there and healthy, they will be a very tough out and wouldn't surprise me at all to come out of the West. The West is truly going to be the wild, wild West because the rest of the teams, after you get to those top 4, you got the Kings last year, who last year won over 50 games for the first time in a long time. They've got that good young nucleus. I love that team out there. Mike Brown is a defensive first coach. So they've got that team out there. I love the Kings. Of course, you got Memphis. Now, a lot of people are writing Memphis off, but they got Marcus Smart, who's going to be the adult in the room. They got their bigs back and Steven Adams that they didn't have last year come playoff time. And they're going to get Ja Morant back after his 25-game suspension. We'll see where his head is when he's back. Memphis, don't sleep on them. Marcus Smart could actually be the key acquisition for them that would be, as I said, the adult in the room. The talent is there, folks. The talent is there. It's just, what is Ja Morant going to be like when he comes back from suspension? And can they stay healthy as well? The most exciting thing to look at in the Western Conference this year is San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama. You've got New Orleans. Again, here's another team where are you going to get from Zion Williamson? Do you realize that before Zion went down that New Orleans had, I believe, the second best record, or might even been the best record in the West? So what are you going to get out of Zion Williamson? Are you going to get a full year out of him? Can he stay healthy? It's another team that if they can have help, they can have their key players, Zion Williamson, play more than 10 games, or 12, or however many games he played. If he can play the majority of the season to go along with everything else they have, they're in New Orleans. The West people, they can be wide open this year. My dark horse teams out there, and the only reason I'm saying they're a dark horse is because of the reason that I just stated, are the New Orleans Pelicans, who made the playoffs last year, the Houston Rockets. Yes, Houston, as horrible as they were last year, but they got Ime Udoka as their coach now. Disciplinarian. They got Fred VanVleet, speaking of an adult in the room, with all those young players there. So they can be a dark horse team this year. Not to go to the finals, but to be a playoff, at least a play-in team. And of course, the Warriors and their usual cast of suspects will not be a play-in team. They'll be in the playoffs. I just don't think they have the horses to come out the West given the level of competition in the West. So, there you have it. Top four in the East, Milwaukee, Boston, New York, Philadelphia. Top four in the West, Denver, LA Lakers, Phoenix Suns, Los Angeles Clippers. So who do I have in the finals? Well, before I give you that, let me just give you who I have as Rookie of the Year this year. The Rookie of the Year this year in the NBA, surprise, surprise, I'm not saying Victor Wembanyama. That's what everybody's saying. I'm going with Scoot Henderson, guard for the Portland Trailblazers. Watch him this year. He has all of the tools. Now, I know everybody's going with Wembanyama, and I could have egg on my face at the end of the year, but something about Scoot Henderson intrigues me, and I'm picking him as the Rookie of the Year this year. The Defensive Player of the Year this year is Evan Mobley of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who was the runner-up last year to JJ the third in Memphis. Evan Mobley is already an elite level defensive player. Hopefully he'll develop more on the offensive end, but I've got him as the Defensive Player of the Year this year. My most valuable player this year, I'm going with Nikola Jokic. I look for the Joker to win the MVP this year. The finals, I have the Milwaukee Bucks coming out the East, winning the Eastern Conference in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics. And in the West, I've got the Los Angeles Lakers winning the West against the Phoenix Suns. My champion are the Milwaukee Bucks. Cleveland Cavaliers, I have finishing 49-33 this year, being the fifth seed in the East, and possibly, because they would play Philadelphia in the first round, given how I picked the teams, possibly advancing past the first round. Maybe. They've got to show me some things. They've got to show me more mental toughness. They've got to show me some more physical toughness.
Especially mental.
Especially right. You were so right, Decisive. Especially mental toughness. You can't have your center saying that the lights were too bright for us, like Jerry Allen said. You can't have someone like Isaac Okoro making the comments he made after the Knicks series last year about you can't teach toughness, that's something that has to grow on, that team was tougher. You can't have that. So I'll be observing him throughout the season to see whether or not I think they can advance past the first round. Their coach, J.B. Bickerstaff, is under pressure. He's not quite yet on the hot seat. However, if they have another first round dismissal, then that might be the end of his run here. Well, I noticed that we're out of time, so I can't get to Micah Parsons, which I really wanted to get to. Very quickly, I won't do it justice. Let me give our hero and our zero of the week in close here. Our hero of the week is Judge Arthur F. Engeron, who is the judge in the Trump civil trial. The judge in the Trump civil trial there in New York. And the reason why I'm choosing him as our hero of the week is that he basically told Donald Trump, he didn't say the words, but he, in essence, told Donald Trump to shut the blank up or you're going to go to jail. Because he slapped a gag order on him. And the reason why he slapped a gag order on him, because Donald Trump went on his social media outlet, Truth Social, and released the name and address of Judge Engeron's clerk. So that, yes, you guessed it, so that his idiot followers could harass her at her home and come to her house and all of that. Put something on his True Social, which was a lie. Oh, I know you're shocked that Trump lied. I know that just shocks you beyond all measure. But put the lie out there that she was dating Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. So the Judge Engoron, as I told Trump basically to shut the blank up or go to jail. So if he violates this gag order, then he's going to go to jail. So for that, finally someone standing up to him, finally someone having the courage and of their convictions, you are a hero of the week. Our zero of the week are the Republicans in the House of Representatives. And if you listen to the first hour of the show, then I don't have to tell you why. You've been listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We're on every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. right here on No Static Radio. But right now, I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time. And until next Saturday at 3 p.m., shalom.
We'd like to thank you for tuning. Oh, I better do it on both sides. Excuse me, you guys. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to the right side with your host, Jeff Doggett, here on the station where we don't bring no static, but we sure enough bring the noise, nostaticradio.net. Make sure you guys check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on facebook.com/no static radio. Oh, no static radio. I forgot I changed that. On Twitter, now known as X at no static underscore radio. On Instagram at the real underscore no static radio. On YouTube at no static radio. And our newest platform, discover.tv, of course, no static radio, all one word. And of course, we accept donations if you're in for supporting small businesses and want to keep the voice of the revolution alive. We're always accepting of donations. They go towards of course, anything that's needed here for the stations to keep our station hosts together and alive and fluid while on the air and communicating with you, or a donation to some of my favorite charities like um, the Alzheimer's Foundation, because I've had 3 grandparents with Alzheimer's. Of course, the Cancer Foundation, breast cancer. Um, God, dog it, don't give me the line about the other one, but of course, the Cancer Foundation as a whole, though, because I've had several family members with cancer. And then, of course, Leroy Baptist Church, where not only do I pay my tithes, but make an outside donation just because, of course, to Toys for Tots. Continuously, Marine Toy Supplies. We send donations towards there. So trust me, if you send us a donation, your donation will not go in. Oh, and the Lupus Foundation. How could I forget? Yes, the West Flick Lupus Foundation. We send donations to there too. So if you guys send us a donation to $ No Static Radio, all one word, trust me, your donations will not go in vain. Yes, that was good to be able to tell you guys because that's really important. Um, Listen, for of course, if you want to listen to replays of this show and others, you can always go to our station page, type in a show. And our shows go back as far as 2009 on Mixler. So go check it out. Type in your show, The Right Side, or any one of your favorite shows at this station, and go listen to all of them on Mixler or Mixcloud.com. Of course, like I said, just type in No Static Radio, all one word. And for continuous streaming, that means refreshing the page. You just sit back, relax, and the page will do it all itself and keep you entertained at tunein.com, live online radio.net, or Media Q for continuous streaming of this show and all others, and for all things on Static Radio, including up and coming events, merchandise, and that look at all our great shows here. We just like to make sure you check out our website, which is going to be shutting down soon, because when I tell you I have some phenomenal updates to the website, you guys are going to be in awe and just enjoy it. I just want you to enjoy it. I want you to enjoy looking at the show hosts and learning about the show hosts, learning about the station, and seeing everything that we have, including our merchandise. Yeah, check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net. Thank you guys for tuning in on another sensational Saturday in this fall of October. And you know what it is? We've got more music for your listening pleasure here on Your Voice of the Revolution, nostaticradio.net, powered by Google, partner with Colors, and sponsored by the dedicated senior medical centers, Lamont Avenue Wines, design me exclusively in the Cleveland Rugby League. Listen, you guys be safe. Have a great one. Side shout out, go Trinity Trojans. The Trinity Trojans play tonight, and I'm super excited. My daughter's part of the band, but I'm super excited and I hope to come home with another win going into this next week where, we'll have our junior retreat at Trinity and everything. Just phenomenal stuff going on. But shout out to the Trinity Trojans, and listen, you guys be safe, take care of yourselves, and take care of others. And until then, enjoy our music, and we'll talk to you again on Monday with Black Anthropy. Here are Your Voice of the Revolution, or Static Radio. Peace, love.